Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I've been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for On SI every single day since August 2019, and we're continuing to move forward through yet another season together. As always, you can find our 24/7, 100% free, boots on the ground coverage of the Jacksonville Jaguars when you follow us on social media such as Facebook and Twitter at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. All right, folks, welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. Few different things to talk about this week for the Jaguars. One of them, of course, is a change in how Trevor Lawrence and Liam Cohen are seemingly moving forward in terms of the process of Cohen getting play calls into Lawrence. For the first, several months in the season, Lawrence did not wear a wristband. It was, I believe, the first time in his career he had done so. It's not, I don't know if I'd say it's rare. Not every quarterback wears a wristband. I know, for instance, I know Jared Goff doesn't. Some just don't. And for Lawrence, it was really about, at least, what him and Liam Cohen had always said was about him being able to visualize the play call as he hears it coming in. He can hear it, he sees it, and then he spits it back out in the huddle, and he can see all the pieces moving perfectly in his head. Where it feels like that kind of hindered the Jaguars at times was there were plenty of drives through the first half plus of the season where the Jaguars were simply put living dangerously. In terms of the clock, I'd venture to say most of their timeouts called this year have been because of, it doesn't look like they're about to get the playoff in time. Whether that's because they're breaking the huddle late, whether that's because the process at the line is taking too long, whether it's because they're canning a play, whatever it is, it just seemed like the Jaguars did not have the most efficient play call to huddle to snap process. Lawrence noted on Sunday, as did Cohen, that it was the stuff that was put on the wristband was more like third down, red zone, situational specific stuff, and maybe some of the longer play calls. To me, it's not a shock that they had their cleanest day on offense with it. Because, you can still balance the benefits of both firing out the play call to him and making him recite it as opposed to just saying, hey, look at play number 12 on your wristband. You can balance that with having specific calls on the wristband. Like, to me, any hurry-up stuff, third down stuff, I wouldn't want him really visualizing it. Not to say it's a negative, but I want to get that play in and out of the huddle. Trevor said it makes about a 5-second difference. 5 seconds can be a big difference in football. It's a game of inches. Every second counts. Every inch counts. Every yard counts. So, it was interesting to me that the Jaguars did ultimately go with the shift. It makes sense, I think, to kind of have it the best of both ways as opposed to just be leaning so hard toward one way. It's a good sign, I think, that they're not stubborn. This coaching staff, to me, if there's any big positive, I think, about it to this point, it doesn't feel like they're overly stubborn. It doesn't feel like they are going to keep banging their heads against the wall over something that doesn't work. We've seen players on the offensive and defensive side of the ball now lose starting roles, lose top rotational roles to other players because they're not performing well. We've tangibly seen that. Guys who the Jaguars added and paid this offseason to come in and play a role, they moved them down the depth chart. I haven't seen that in several years in Jacksonville. When the Jaguars signed the guy to a sizable deal the last few years, you knew he was going to play. So, for me, this is just another instance of showing that Liam Cohen and his staff aren't stubborn. They're willing to be flexible. They're willing to look for adjustments. Because to me, a lot of times, that is what makes or breaks a coaching staff. I mean, Doug Peterson obviously is a good football coach. He's not as bad as the 4-13 record last year, but the stubbornness with the play caller position was undoubtedly one of the true failures of that regime. And is probably the biggest reason why Doug Peterson, that along with the Ryan Nielsen hire, why he's no longer the head coach of the Jaguars. So, I think the Jaguars coaching staff has shown things like that, to get excited about, to be positive about. And it was just interesting to me to see the adjustment from Lawrence. And played one of his better games. Like I've said, only a couple throws I think were missed. The interception, that fourth down to Jacoby Myers, where kind of felt like nobody was really open. And then a deep shot to Quinn Morris that fell incomplete. He was getting pressured and couldn't exactly, get his feet under him on that. Otherwise, ahead of Cardinals game, Jaguars didn't have a real practice on Wednesday. They were, in jerseys and sweatpants, no pads on, nothing like that. Still, an excruciating injury list for a Jaguars team that has dealt with injuries for the last really month plus. And a lot of times when the bye comes, you think that's the time to finally get healthy, put some distance between you and the injuries. The Jaguars have gotten significantly less healthy since the bye week, which is hard to figure it out. And it's not even since they started playing games in the bye week. Since a day or two when the bye week ended and they still hadn't played a game. You see the injury report and you're like, oh, holy crap. So their injury list, like I mentioned, looks very similar to a CVS receipt. It is unnecessarily long. That said, the Cardinals are facing plenty of injury questions of their own. The Cardinals will not have Marvin Harrison Jr. on the field against the Jaguars. I know Marvin Harrison hasn't been as good or as productive as everybody thought he'd be or as his draft slot said he should be. I'm very keenly aware to that. But I think his absence is huge for Jacksonville. I mean, guys, he's caught 12 touchdowns since the 2024 season began. He's a really big body. He wins at the catch point. He wins with strength. He wins with power. Go back and watch the Jaguars this year and tell me which wide receivers they struggle the most against. And it's obvious what kind they are. Ted McMillan, T. Higgins, Nico Collins. I mean, they just have not had somebody who can really match up with these bigger guys. I mean, Jorian Jones isn't very big. Buster Brown's not very big. Jordan Lewis isn't very big. Travis Hunter's not very big. The guy that they had for matchups like that was Tyson Campbell, and they traded him to Cleveland. So I think it's a big boost for the Jaguars. Yes, he's not a dominant player or a top receiver or anything like that, but I think the simple fact of him not being on the field is significant for the Jaguars. As for the Jaguars' injuries, Trayvon Walker did not practice on Wednesday. That's absolutely got to be concerning. Did not practice with a knee injury. Of course, he left Sunday's game against the Chargers with an injury before returning later on. That'll be one to watch. I mean, they need him. They need him every week. They especially need him this week. It feels like this is a game that, you need to bring your best of the best to. Jaguars did get some good news. Brian Thomas Jr. is limited. Brendan Strange limited. Jordan Lewis limited. On the other end of that, Bayshaw Tootin and Travis Etienne were both limited with ankles and shoulder injuries, respectively. So quite a lengthy injury list for both teams heading into this pivotal Week 12 game.